Flosstube. It's Arlene. It is Monday, July 4th, 2022. If you are celebrating or in a patriotic mood, happy July 4th. I know it's been a while, but I have had it on my mind for at least a week and a half. I want to do a video, and then, life. I'm going to say right now, I'm working under time pressure this morning only because lighting. I've mentioned in the last few videos that I've been having issues with lighting where I am right now. I moved about a year ago and still haven't found the perfect setup. I was up here stitching early a couple mornings ago and realized that I thought the light might be better in the mornings. But I also know I have a skylight right there. And that's been the issue with the lighting thing, is the skylight that I cannot cover because of where it is. But as we get to a certain part of the morning, the sun starts to cross over, and you can't see it, but over there, the patch of sun is starting to come. So the goal is, can I finish this video before the patch of sun makes it over here? We'll see. There have been times when I'm really in a, working. I'll start on this, I'll be working over here, and as the sun starts to creep, I just have to move myself over there. And of course, it changes during different seasons. Like I learned during the winter time when it's lower, the sun hits these books, and if you can see my needlework piece up there, the Antioch mosaic, well, I don't know about the little pieces here, but definitely that becomes in the line of sun. And so during the winter, I have a piece of fabric that I covered over, which you just got to do. I mean, it's either that or take it down. Okay. You don't need to hear that much about light, but hopefully this is a little bit better than before. Let me just jump right into things. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I know there are so many Flosstube channels you can choose. I know there are people who are, who put out videos on a regular scheduled basis, so you know to look for them, end of the month or every Sunday or whatever. So if you're here and you found me for the first time, welcome. If you're a returning person, thank you so much for coming back and hanging out with me for a little bit. One of the biggest things on my mind these days is the New Jersey Flosstube Retreat 2022. This is a retreat that I organize, and we are just a little over 2 weeks away until it happens. Not that I would bring you guys downstairs, but if you could see the pile of stuff, boxes and containers and stuff that I have building up. Little background, I first did a retreat in May of 2018. I had discovered Flosstube about a year previous, and that fall there was they called it the Flosstube Retreat in Austin, Texas. And I'm not going to say any names because I don't want to get wrong, but I know it was organized, and I don't know, maybe there were 30, 40 people there. Someone could correct me if I'm wrong. And I mean, I learned about it way too late. And it's not like even if there were spots open, I would have logistically been able to go. But the point is, that weekend, leading up to that weekend, and then that weekend, there were lots of people posting on Instagram and doing live videos. And I was wanting to be there. The definition of FOMO, fear of missing out, because I was missing out. And literally in combination that same time, I thought, well, if I can't be in Austin, Texas, which I couldn't be, if I can't be where there's a retreat happening, maybe I can make the people come to me and have a retreat. With two pieces in my mind. Number one, I'm a fairly organized person. The idea of putting on a retreat and making it happen was not an overwhelming, no way I could do it kind of thing at all. And number two, I am near a very large needlework store, and I know that that would definitely be a draw. So, long story short, first retreat, May of 2018. What to call it? Well, because Flosstube community had been so important in my life, my stitching life, it opened up a whole new world for me. I mean, I've been stitching since I was in high school, but this was a whole new community. For me, it was about bringing together people from the community of Flosstube. And I've said from the very beginning, sure, some of us make Flosstube videos, but if you're sitting here watching right now, sorry, I keep fixing this. If you're watching right now, you are part of the Flosstube community because you're watching Flosstube. So that's always been my take on it. Had the second retreat in August. It was either the end of July, beginning of August of 2019. And then was all planned, date, contract, hotel contract signed for 2020, canceled. I cautiously in the fall of 2020 started a hotel contract for 2021, not really knowing where the world was going to be. I made the decision, I know I talked about it, about canceling it just from financial reasons, that I would be financially responsible if lots of people didn't show up. It was the right decision, disappointing, but it was the right decision. But when I started organizing 2022 in the fall, I'm like, yeah, this has got to happen. And so it's happening. And it's less than 3 weeks. It's almost just a little over 2 weeks away. So I'm incredibly excited to welcome everybody. It'll be at the Hampton Inn in Woodbridge, New Jersey. A good percentage of these people, who are a little over 100 people, at some point I'll do the numbers. I want to say about 70 of the people coming were registered for 2020 and 2021 and are going to be showing up in 2022. So I'm excited to see people I haven't seen in a long time, to meet people in person that I've had some kind of communication with beforehand, to meet some new folks. So there will be lots to talk about the retreat after the retreat. And so it's still called the New Jersey Flosstube Retreat. I mean, that's just the name. I realize how much Flosstube has grown in these last 3 years. And I keep playing with the thought of needing to change the name. I don't want people to think that you have to make Flosstube videos to come to this retreat. And that was my fear. And that's the reason why I want to consider changing it for the future. Something to contemplate. If you have any ideas on that topic, please feel free to leave them below. So lots of details to share with you, probably in the next video I make, which will be after the retreat. But a few things to share now. One of the reasons it's so long between my videos is that, if you don't know, I'm a designer. I design under Works by ABC, and most of my stitching is models for future designs. And I would typically not want to share them until they're finished. There's been some exceptions to that, but that's in general. And so I sit there thinking, what can I do a Flosstube video about if I'm not sharing my current stitching? But I started kind of keeping a little piece of paper on the side. I could share that, or I could share that. And I feel like I had enough of a list that I would do it today. So first thing, a couple things related to the retreat. I will have a trunk show of my designs there. And I just thought I would reshare this one. It is called Elegant Lace. It was a new design at the August Expo last year. I'll talk about August Expo for this year in a little bit. And I love it. If you are familiar with my designs, I have a whole series of lace designs. And I feel like each time I've done a new one, I'll say, oh, this one's my favorite. And so this one at this moment is my favorite. That said, I have my next one charted out. I have the fabric, I have the thread. I'm ready to go as soon as I'm finished with some other things that need to be finished first. And I'll say right now, feels like that one might be my new favorite. We'll see how it all turns out. The reason I'm showing this right now is that I won't have this at my, physically in the room with me at the trunk show, because I am sending it off to competition, to an exhibition. The American Needlework Guild, ANG, does a yearly seminar, a week or 5 days or something, of classes and gathering. I've never attended as a student. A number of years ago, it was taking place in Philadelphia, and I did drive down to see some of the things that were open to the public, which included the exhibit. And that was the first year I'd entered a piece in the exhibit. I've entered pieces at Woodlawn Needlework exhibit for many, many years. This was the first time. That was the first time. Since then, I have, I'm not going to say every year, but many years, have sent in something, mail it in for the exhibit. And so this year I'm going to mail in this. I need to send it off next week or the week after, but the point is before the retreat. So I won't have this one with me. I'll have copies of the pattern, but I will have. So in 2019, a similar thing happened, that my very large gossamer lace piece I was sending off to the ANG exhibit literally at the same time, so I didn't have it with me physically. So I was able to get a picture, like a 12-inch by 12-inch picture taken. So I just had something physically there. And a couple people said, because they had seen me post about it, oh, that's much smaller than I thought it was. And I had to clarify, oh, that's just a picture. So this year I'm going to, although this one, it will almost be, I should get a ruler out, it 12-inch by 12-inch picture will almost be life size. But I will put a little note, this is just a picture. Actual one is off at competition. And if I win any ribbons or anything, I'll share with you when I've learned something. So that's one thing related to retreat that I wanted to share. And another thing related to retreat, which is something I've been stitching and could share with you. It's probably on my Instagram I could check. Let's just say winter of 2019 into the spring. I discovered 56 count fabric and discovered I want to make a challenge for myself. And I stitched a little piece over one on 56 count. I know I'm not the only one that's done that. Go check out Almond M&M. I'll link her below on Instagram. She is amazing, and she does most of her stitching on tiny, tiny, tiny things like 56 count over one. So I made a design into a necklace. Here, can you see it there? And this design is, I believe it's just like the center of one of my square pieces of part of another design. And I loved it so much. I stitched one and turned it into a necklace and had it on the raffle table for the retreat. I have I have 35, 40 items that will be on a raffle table, raffle tickets. All the money raised is going to go to a local no-kill animal shelter. Last 2019, in that one weekend, about 100 attendees, we raised $2,268, or was it 86? $68 to give to that animal shelter. And the day I showed up there, totally random, I didn't call ahead or anything, and said, can I talk to the director? And of course the person at the desk is like, what's for? And I said, well, I have a donation. She's like, oh, you can leave it here. And I said, well, I want to show you. I opened up the envelope and I showed her the check. She said, let me go call the director right now, and got her down there. And just the look on her face, she was so like giddy with excitement. Again, out of the blue, this person shows up with a couple $1,000s for an animal shelter that, like all, could really use it. I'm way off track now. So in 2019, I made, I believe it was the identical, like same pattern and everything, same color thing, chain and everything, and had it on the raffle table, one of the contributions that I had made. So I wanted to do that again. Many of the items on the table are donations I've had from thread and companies from other places, but also a fair number of them are things that people have made. I have a lap quilt. I have a few like bags. There's going to be amazing things, and hopefully I'll remember to take pictures and post them. So I started working on a necklace. I have, this is the fabric this is on is a natural or raw linen, whatever they call this color. There is 56 count in white. So that's, and all right, so that was, I started this, and I know you can't see it, but there was enough errors that I'm like, yeah, no. So I restarted it. Now, here's an interesting thing. I'm thinking there's probably some of you out there that have stitched on 56 count, probably for samplers. Maybe you've stitched something else, but I am curious. So here we are. This is a finished piece. I am hoping to do a second one, maybe on the natural linen, although I also now have gray 56 count. It's full crosses, and I use, it's called YLI 106. YLI is the name of the company, and it's a silk, and it's very, very fine. Like, it's finer than sewing thread. And I knew about it because of my my bobbin lace work, but that's another topic. So here's a question. Can you see if I hold it like this and, wait, I gotta do it right. So here it is like this, and then I turn it sideways. This is supposed to be a completely symmetrical design. And you can see that it's wider than it is tall. And I could sort of see it as I was stitching. I'm like, what's going on here? And I'm trying to count out the fabric threads, and it is not a perfect 56 by 56. And I know there's linens that literally mark themselves something like 35/38 or whatever the numbers are. And I didn't in any way, this is a Zweigart, just a basic Zweigart Kingston linen. And I was like, is there something wrong with this fabric? Like this piece, this bolt? So I go back to my necklace. I don't remember this at all when I was stitching it, but I noticed that I had, I don't know if I can get it close enough and in focus, that I put it in the necklace slanted. Like if you can see the fabric threads, it was stitched like this. Now, can you see that there? And see it there. It also is not 56 by 56. It's off by a couple or something that makes it that this, again, is a symmetrical design, but it doesn't see it. Now, what I don't remember is, did I put it like this because I saw that at the time and thought at a slant it's not as obvious, or on point, whatever you want to call it? Or did I just like it like this orientation, and not even realize? So I need to decide. I mean, I have the backing, the necklace, everything. I'll need to decide what I'm going to do with this. I have the other one that I'm going to stitch charted out. I don't know if I'll make any adjustments realizing this, but we'll see. So anyway, I get asked the questions thread. I use a beading needle. Yes, magnification is the highest thing that I have, and obviously good light. And again, it's a fine enough. You're not really gonna get the focus. It is a fine enough thread that I can get full crosses out of it, which is pretty cool. So this necklace and hopefully a second one will be on the raffle table in just a couple weeks. So another thing, I'm keeping my eye on the sun creeping over here. Another thing I've been stitching on in this last week or so. A little bit out of the blue, but kind of fun to be doing something like this. My friend McKenna, Stitching in Sequins, go check her out. Her store online is 1884 Stitchery. She purchases stashes, either people who are no longer stitching or deceased stitchers' stashes. She purchased a large stash, and included in there was the piece, the Desiderata sampler. Now this is my copy of the pattern. I bought this, I couldn't tell you how long ago. I know from the store that closed over 10 years ago. So it was, 15, 20, I don't know, however long. I've had this. I've always loved the poem. I've never stitched this. It's always in the back of my mind. But I do know it's like a desired pattern these days. It's out of print. It's by Indigo Rose, Catherine Strickler, and I think it's 1996. I don't have the thing showing here. Anyway, so in this stash, McKenna discovered a Desiderata that was almost completed. It is a large piece. It is something by, I should have had this out. Here's the thing. It is 166 wide by 495 high. So, yep, that's the bottom. There we go. So, here is the Desiderata, and most of it was completed. But there were a few parts that weren't. And I offered to McKenna that I would finish it because she doesn't do specialty stitches, and what was left was specialty stitches. So just to share with you what needed to be done. So this row of diamonds right there is actually 4 different stitches alternating between an eyelet, a Rhodes, a satin stitch, and queen stitches. So finished all of that. This band right here, really all that was started was 1 cross. And I think the green line's already there. So I did this whole part, including the Jewish star, the other cross. That is a plaited stitch at the top and bottom, and in between is a triple rice stitch. This is stitched using Silken Colors gray malkin. This was all nice, and then I dropped it right before I started, so I got to sort it out. But I will say this has renewed my faith in over-dyed threads. And what I mean by that, I love the over-dyed, the hand-dyeds that are all like a, shades of green or shades of blue or, blues into violets kind of thing. But the threads that involve some very different colors, I mean, there's blues and violets and yellows into greens. This doesn't appeal to me for cross-stitching, certainly. And this isn't actually the over-dyed that is called for there. It's close. But I started stitching it, and I realized with specialty stitches how much I really love it. Just going to keep that in the back of my mind when I don't do much designing with, I would love to design more of this kind of stuff with specialty stitches and so on. And it's like I need to find the right audience to sell those kinds of things to. Also because it takes so much longer to chart out the diagrams and everything for that kind of stuff. And anyway, just something that came up as I was stitching on this. And then the biggest part, not biggest part, is the hardanger at the bottom. And so you can see I've got the whole, basic outline. They're called cluster blocks for hardanger. And I've started the cutting. One thing that I posted about this on my Instagram, which I just thought was very touching. So the stitcher, we could see that she clearly had another plan for this bottom, because this part right here, be cheerful, strive to be happy, which is charted to be sort of the second half of the second row, she had stitched over here. And like clearly leaving this side for something. Maybe she wasn't going to do the hardanger. Maybe she was going to put some kind of motif there. We have no idea. But because I was going to do the hardanger, I pulled out her stitches and put them here. So in that process of when I first got it and looking it over and reading the poem again, because again, I hadn't seen it in a while, something struck me about, oh, I know. Her words were here, and then I was looking at the pattern to look at the hardanger part. And right above the hardanger is this line, and in the chart it says, be careful. Be careful, strive to be happy. And I double checked, it's small, but you could see it in the picture. It definitely says careful. She had stitched cheerful. I go to the Google, and the original poem has cheerful. Why did the designer use careful? Further Googling, there's a really interesting story about this poem, including the fact that it's in the public domain and why it's in the public domain. But the original poem did have Be Cheerful. There were some later versions, including a song that changed a few words, particularly to changing it to Be Careful. So I know nothing about Catherine Strickler, the designer of Indigo Rose. Did she base it off the song? Did she purposely know she was changing it, using careful instead of cheerful? I don't know. But this stitcher knew, and she stitched cheerful. I mean, it's one extra letter. It's totally doable. So when I pulled it out, even though I'm trying to make everything else as identical as possible to the original design, the original chart, I did want to keep cheerful in there, and so I did. And so you can see I started the cutting of the hardanger. If you are a hardanger person, this was interesting. About a year ago was the last time I did a hardanger piece. So to me, not that long ago, because when I was stitching that one last year, it had been a few years, and I actually pulled it out. This is the hardanger piece that I did. I gotta see which way is the right way. I mean, it's not perfectly, here we go. And so I started doing the cutting, and I was like, why am I struggling with this so much? Now, I have very good hardanger scissors. These are my Dovo hardanger scissors. And just to compare, like this is a, I don't know, $10 pretty pair. And if you compare the size of the blades, you need really, it's ideal to have really fine blades when you're cutting hardanger. So these are a good pair. And what I realized was happening, and I'm going to use this as my example, because I didn't remember having as much trouble cutting when I did this piece, and I figured out why. In this piece, there are a lot of, I don't know what to call it, but like ones, where you need to cut off, I need something to point with, you need to cut here and here and just pull out what is in effect 4 threads. Like the length of a thread that is only 4 lengths. As opposed to like cutting here and here, and you're pulling out a much longer length, which means you can get a better cut. I'm probably not explaining this well for anyone who is not a hardanger person. But doing the little ones, it's hard to get a good cut because you don't have enough tension in the fabric threads. Why did I not run into that in this one? Well, I did, but only in such a few places. Like here was a place where I did one, and I think up here, like at each, but literally so few places, because so many other places I definitely was pulling out certainly like a length here, but even these guys. So it's just, I've needed to be careful. I have, full disclosure, I have cut a few of my cluster blocks, but I will restitch them so that I'm not thrown off by that. I first learned to do hardanger when I was going a number of years ago to Fletcher Farm, which is a place up in Vermont that sort of still exists. I think they, like everyone else, struggled through being okay now post-pandemic. They had this wonderful summer school. You go for a week and you learn woodworking or painting or jewelry making or fabric dyeing. And I went there many years for bobbin lace. And Evelyn, if you're watching, hello. She was my teacher there. I spoke with her not that long ago, and she mentioned watching my videos. And in addition to bobbin lace, I think it was my second year there, I stayed on, so her bobbin lace class was for the week, and then I stayed on that following weekend, and she was doing a hardanger class. And so that's where I learned from a human, not from a video or a book, and it's like, it's okay. You can learn how to do it, and you can learn how to fix your mistakes. You know, yes, it is possible to cut the wrong thread. It happens. What's important is to learn how to fix it, and it's fixable. And I even remember I was in the class and I went to the bathroom, which was just like slightly down a hall, and I heard this noise of ah in the room. So I go back and I discovered the first person in the room who had cut the wrong thread. And Evelyn had a little prize for that person. And she said, I was just waiting for it to happen because she knew it happened. And then she was using that to teach us how to handle it. And it happened to other people, and she repeated the lesson on how to handle it. Anyway, so once I'm done with the cutting, I need to do the wrapping of the bars, and it will be using this over dye, which I'll be curious to see how the colors play out with this. And then that's the last part. It'll be done. So that's Desiderata. I am anxious to have that completed. Oh, and I'll also mention I had a major stitching mistake, not a cutting mistake. And I'm all for a good fudge when it comes to a mistake in needlework, cross stitch, whatever, that really doesn't make a difference. But I'm also aware there are times where it really does make a difference. And yeah, that happened here. And it was a huge one. I had to literally, before I was doing any cutting, I literally had to pull out half of what I stitched. And I will always remember that, partially because I was running out of thread, and I discovered the thread I was using, which was a pearl cotton, was going to be incredibly difficult, if not impossible, to get another ball of it. But all is good, made it through. But there's a few major stitching mistakes that, I keep in mind, and that's going to be one of them for like the rest of my stitching life. All right, Desiderata, completed. Next on my list. I had to put this on pause because of Desiderata, but I want to get back to it. This late winter, spring, winter, everything going on in Ukraine. In doing some Google, I don't know, however it was, I came to remember some of, well, how do I start this? I have a book, okay? Ukrainian whitework. It's a specific area of Ukraine. This was published by Yvette Stanton. She does some amazing books. I'll show you in a moment. And some of my Googling around. I mean, it's not about supporting Ukraine. It wasn't about sending money or helping out. It was just learning more about what was going on in that region and some of the people who were doing some designs as fundraisers. Anyway, I stumbled across this somewhere. I'm like, oh, I think I have that book. So I go up to my bookshelf where I have my Yvette Stanton books. I have 4 of them. I did not have this one. And it's technically it's out of print. It is not easy to find, or at least not easy to find when it's not coming like from Australia and needing to, because that's where she is, and pay Australia shipping. But long story short, Abby, Top Knot Stitcher, was able to get it for me from a distributor. So thank you, Abby, for being able to get this for me. So I wanted to learn more about, in effect, what makes this, which, you know, in a picture on a screen you couldn't see very clearly, how is this different from Hardanger? Yvette Stanton, not all of her books, but most of her books are about white work from different areas. Sardinian knotted embroidery, Montmelic, I'm not pronouncing correctly, Portuguese white work. This is early style Hardanger, which has some distinct differences between the Hardanger that it's evolved to that I just showed you some of. She writes, these books are so well done. You get the most, and this was, it wasn't her first, I think it was her second. So it's definitely early on, but you know, she gives you background history, but look at the pictures and the diagrams. And may have all these books. This is the only one I've stitched anything from. It is Portuguese white work, has all these bullion knots. And I know I've showed this before. This was a sampler I did. I went all out in terms of, I could have picked a little pincushion from her book. And there was something about her sampler that made me want to do it. And then I even made a mistake because it was supposed to be a square sampler. And here I am pulling out threads, and I was working on my scroll bars, and at some point I'm like, wait a second. Yeah, I pulled out an extra row. And the only way to solve this was to make an extra row. And so that's why my sampler is 6 by 7 blocks instead of 7 by 7 blocks. Instead of 6 by 6 blocks. And I followed her, I believe I followed her instructions for doing a nice edging. I mean, I just put on a piece of fabric. Anyway, so this, I love her books. I love the information. I love the background, the research she does. And so I wanted to give this a try. So she has, I've tried to do a little bit reading. This is not the only embroidery / needlework from the Ukraine. Please correct me if I've got this wrong, anyone who's watching it knows more than I do. And I'm not going to pronounce this correct. Mrzeka? I meant to look up she's got the explanation of the pronunciation inside. But she talks about that there's large scale and small scale. So this learning sampler is the large scale. And you could see I barely got started before I got distracted with Desiderata. So I haven't even really gotten to the, you know, this is only one thread that's pulled out. There's much more thread that needs to be pulled out and wrapped, and it's the kind of thing you read the instructions and I think I'm following them, but I also know it's not going to make much sense until I'm actually doing it. So I will look forward to getting back to this. If I enjoy it, I would be interested in doing the small scale sampler, and then we'll see from there. This is her smallest book, but again, it's one of her earliest. There's some projects in the back. We'll see how much I enjoy this. The idea of maybe doing a little pin cushion, maybe. We'll see. This is stitched on a 25 count linen. She says 25 and 32 count linens. I don't think that, something in that neighborhood. And I'm using just a Pearl 8 thread. It's again, she's from Australia, and she makes it very clear, you know, these are the threads I use, but I also know it's hard to get specific threads. And she uses cotton broder, which is not so easy to get here in the US. But she basically said to find a thread that's a little bit thicker than the fabric threads. And so by that, I just played around and said, oh, Pearl Cotton 8 is going to work fine. So anxious to get back to that, stitching wise. All right. I'm looking around. On my list. Also, just wanted to mention that another thing I've stitched recently, which I can't show you because I literally don't have it anymore, is that I got a design accepted to just cross stitch. It's going to be in the February 2023, which is hard to believe, next February's issue, which will probably come out in late December, because I think they used to literally label them January/February, but now they just label them with the second of the, because it comes out 6 times a year. And it's a Valentine's Day themed project, which I hope you will like, and I'll be anxious to share when it comes out. I'm not typically a holiday stitcher person. Like, you've never seen well, Hanukkah designs, yes, but you've never seen a Halloween design from me. But I'll explain more once it all comes out. But the Valentine's, it was one of the things they suggest as a scene. When they send out the call for design submissions, they put some general themes and color schemes and so on. Really, you could submit anything. And not surprisingly, for the February issue, one of the things they list is Valentine's related. So I'll be anxious to share more with you on that when it comes out, because I really enjoyed it. Last thing on my, well, related, sort of 3 things that are all connected, is about, I don't often talk about purchases, but I made a major purchase last month. I bought the DMC cabinet with the full range, the full line of threads. I realized I was at a point in my designing career where the real thread, not the printed one, but the real thread DMC thing, which I used all the time. I mean, you can't tell, but this is not worn, but it's definitely been used. Just wasn't cutting it anymore. In terms of, I wanted to lay threads out. Now I have, in these 3 basket things, I'll go with about 75–80% of DMC colors. And this, where am I? That container with bobbins are the really old ones, because when I first started cross-stitching, like when I was high school and college, I bobbinated. But then I just became a little baggy person. I never took away the bobbinated ones. I still have them, and sometimes I go to them. But in these in these containers, there is they're all in baggies. But anyway, as a designer, I thought, I'm ready to take it to the next level. And at first I was like, oh, I don't need the cabinet. I could just buy the threads. And then when you look at the cost of buying a full line of DMC threads, the cost of the cabinet added on to that, given how beautiful this cabinet is and how well it organizes everything, yeah, it was well worth it. I purchased it directly from DMC. I know when it first came out, people were having a hard time getting it. I haven't checked recently. I mean, again, I was only a month ago, and it showed up pretty quickly. I mean, it was no problem. I chose to organize my cabinet. I'm not going to show it to you. You can probably find plenty of videos where people have done unboxings and so on, so you can find it. I chose to organize my threads not in numerical order, which I think most people do, but I organized it according to this. So like in the first drawer, there's like 5 sections, and in section 1 are all of these. Section 2, section 3, section 4, section 5. Second drawer, these 5, and so on. And got it all organized. As I was doing that plan, I'm like, is this really going to be the best way I'm going to use it? And I figured if it became not usable, I would dump them all out and reorganize them by number. But it has been so wonderful from the first thing I started using it for, because say I'm looking for a pink, and I'm like, I could pull out all these colors and hold it up to the fabric or to whatever it is and just have in my hand, oh, this one's too dark, this one's too light, this one's just right. So I am so pleased with my choice of organizing it by this and how much I've already used it. Now, what have I specifically used it for? I'm in the midst of working on designs that'll come out in the August Expo, which is last weekend of August. It's an online virtual wholesale market. This will be the 3rd one. It started, Janice Note of Noteworthy Needle, in March of 2021 when there wasn't going to be a Nashville. She did it again in August of 2021. And she made it very clear from the beginning, she's not trying to compete with Nashville. Her ideal, which I think makes a lot of sense, is that there be 2 shows a year. The in-person Nashville experience and an online version in March and August, 2 different times a year, which stores that can't go to Nashville financially, logistically, whatever, have a different opportunity to purchase in wholesale way. And designers who can't go to Nashville for logistical, financial, or simply because there's a limit in size, can participate in Expo. So I've been basically since I finished my Nashville designs, I've been kind of plotting out what do I want to have available for Expo. And there's one design in particular that I'm actively stitching at a point like this because it's downstairs on my scroll frame that I work on down there, that I have very much used I need a different thread, let me look at the whole bunch at one time. So when I come to talk to you about my Expo releases, I will share more in detail. But I am very pleased with this purchase, and I'm so glad I did it. From a designer perspective, my vision is that those threads will never get used. I figure out what colors I want, and I pull from there if I need to go get more, to keep this as a complete collection without like random strings and so on hanging around. There's already been one time where I needed, because I couldn't get to the store, I just needed a little bit, so sure, I cut off a little piece. But in general, my plan is to keep that as a pristine collection to use as a designer. So again, be anxious to share with you when I'm ready for my Expo designs. But rolling on things here. One last thing to share about Expo. There is a project, I don't know what to call it, that you may have already started to see posts related to on Instagram for, called the Autumn Garden palette. Designers, now there was one of these in March related to cows, which I participated in. I did a freebie. There was something in August, I want to say it was cats, don't quote me on that because I didn't participate in it. This one, there's some good organization behind it, and I appreciate a good organization. So Ryan from Wild Violet Cross Stitch, she is amazing. Go check her out. I'll put some links below. When I first saw this being mentioned on some designer groups, and to be very specific, it is using cottage garden threads, and it says, unlike the last one, which involves sulky threads, which you could use whatever you want and how much. This one, you're only supposed to use the 4 threads, which is a great challenge. But then when I looked at the threads, it is just so not my color palette. It's autumn. There's a yellow and a green and an orange, and they're beautiful looking threads. And I know I at first said, I just don't think I could work with those threads. Ryan, who's a great friend, reached out to me, asked if I wanted to participate. I paused, I looked back at the threads, and I said, you know what? This is going to be a good challenge for myself. Now, it's supposed to be a small design, 60 by 60. So it's not like one of my giant ones. And I thought, you know what? Let me go. I haven't gotten the threads yet, hopefully soon. Let me give this a try. Let me challenge myself as a designer that I just haven't in a while. So we'll see. We'll see what I come up with. And again, you can, there'll be more. I'll put info below to follow Instagram link, hashtags and so on. Okay, that's the end of my list. The sun has crept closer, but not close enough, so I could keep talking, but I don't have more to talk about. I'm glad, gosh, as always, I didn't think I had that much to talk about, and here I am at 44 minutes, which is long enough at this point. So if you're still here with me, thank you so much. I appreciate, like I said, I know you have plenty of Flosstube channels to choose from. I'm not your typical, nearly 100% cross-stitch stitcher with lots of projects from lots of designers you all know. So if you stay with me and seen my what I have to share, I appreciate it. As always, the likes and the comments are a big deal with YouTube and getting other people to share. So please, whenever you can, for any video you're watching, hitting that like and leaving, even if it's the briefest comment, is so wonderful as personal feedback, but also it just helps channels get seen in other ways. If you're celebrating the 4th of July, well, I don't know how long it's going to take me to get this. It might not be till July 5th. It doesn't matter. Happy 4th of July, if that's something that is for you, patriotic, whatever. Keep stitching, keep safe, keep well. I'll see you next time.